WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Abuja. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. First, our top stories. Senegalese Prime Minister Sonko embarks on a 5-day working visit to Turkey aimed at boosting trade. Residents of Plateau State, north-central Nigeria, commend WDR security project in promoting dialogue and awareness.
What WADR did was just exactly what you would expect. If you don't have first-hand information about the plight of those that have been affected by these insecurities, especially women and children, you cannot speak about it.
Chadian President Deby Itno arrives in Niger for a working visit, and an ECOWAS parliamentary delegation kicks off awareness on drug addiction and mental health issues in Monrovia.
The idea of this mission is that we want to synchronize a drug law for West Africa. When this mission is completed, they want to do a presentation to the ECOWAS Parliament in our next session, which will be held in Ghana. And the result from that will go to the authorities of head of states and government.
Let's stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to all of our listeners across the sub-region and beyond. Well, let's begin right here in Senegal as Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko embarks on a 5-day mission to Turkey to boost growing bilateral cooperation. Sonko's trip is at the invitation of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. According to a statement from the Prime Minister's office, the mission is part of the strategy to relaunch Senegal's economic diplomacy in line with the Vision Senegal 2050 recently presented by the government. Abdullah Hassan has more details in this report.
The Senegalese presidency says Ousmane Sonko's 5-day working visit to Turkey is strategic and above all economically beneficial. Before Sonko's visit to Turkey, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye had made an official visit to the country late last year to consolidate diplomatic relations between the two nations first established in 1962. Ousmane Sonko's engagement with the Turkish president therefore aims to strengthen bilateral ties and explore sectors of expansion including water, forestry, defense and civil protection. Already, Dakar and Ankara enjoy expertise in health, tourism, aviation, education, marine resource management and security cooperation. The Senegalese-Turkish cooperation has resulted in several major infrastructure projects in Senegal, such as the Abdou Diouf International Conference Center in Diamniadio, funded to the tune of 32 billion CFA francs by Turkey. Others are the completion of the Blaise Diagne International Airport, the Diamniadio National Interest Market, and the Dakar Arena Complex. Ousmane Sonko's trip follows his recent engagement with China's Xi Jinping, which he assures will boost trade and support the government's economic recovery plan.
Abdullah Hassan filed that report. Well, do stay with us as Professor Fallou Sam, Chair of the Institute for Trade Policy Studies in Africa, joins us for an assessment of Senegal's recent international engagement and their impact on the local economy. Now, in Côte d'Ivoire, the opposition has been authorized to march to denounce Alassane Ouattara's candidacy for a 4th term. While permission was granted, the route and location have been changed. Previously scheduled for August 2, 2025, the Common Front March will finally take place on August 9, 2025. According to the organizers, the new route was chosen in mutual agreement with the prefect of Abidjan and law enforcement officials. The authorities had banned the march because it was too close to Independence Day on August 3, a sensitive period when security forces are focused on holding the parade. At the same time, several PDCI and PPACI officials who are supposed to mobilize activists for the success of the march are still being questioned at the police headquarters. They were summoned on Tuesday by the state security for unknown charges. Now, from Freetown, chairperson of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, President Julius Maada Bio, is calling for increased diplomatic effort to reconcile the sub-regional organization and the AES Confederation. Bio made the call on Tuesday during his engagement with an ECOWAS delegation led by the Commission President Dr. Omar Alieu Toure to arrive in Sierra Leone to provide an update on the political situation in several member states and on issues related to the Community Development Tax (CDT). Christopher Teacher completes the story.
The ECOWAS Commission President and his team are visiting Sierra Leone, home of the new chairperson, 6 weeks after Bio assumed chairmanship of the organization. Julius Maada Bio, who inherited office with a plethora of issues, from political instability to worsening security situation in several member countries, encouraged dialogue and fostering cooperation with the AES member states as they finalized their withdrawal from ECOWAS in September. Bio stated that building a stronger relationship with ECOWAS and the AES is fundamental to promoting trade, free movement and strengthening peace and security in the region. Recall that during the Abuja summit on June 22, a ministerial committee was established to politically and technically oversee the exit of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger from the bloc. It should be noted that an earlier meeting was held in Bamako on May 22 between the ECOWAS Commission and the foreign ministers of the AES about the future of security and economic cooperation. For his part, Dr. Omar Alieu Toure provided an update on the political situation in several member states and on issues related to the Community Development Tax (CDT). The president of the ECOWAS Commission also assured that an assessment mission will soon be deployed to Sierra Leone and Guinea to help resolve the Yenga border disputes between the two countries.
Christopher Teacher reporting there.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Niamey, the Nigerian capital, will today host Chadian President Muhammad Idris Deby Itno. Deby arrived in Niger for a working visit focused on bilateral cooperation and Sahelian solidarity. The Chadian presidency in a statement disclosed that the president's trip is also in continuation of the diplomatic talks since the start of the Nigerian transition in July 2023. Augustine Kohli has more details in his report.
The Chadian leaders' working visit is part of a continuation of mediation talks initiated at the beginning of the Nigerian crisis after the July 26, 2023 coup. Recall that Muhammad Deby had traveled to Niamey via Abuja at the invitation of Nigerian President and then ECOWAS chairperson Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He held talks with the junta leader General Abdurrahman Chiani, the ousted president Mohamed Bazoum, and the former president Mahamadou Issoufou. This visit also aims to maintain diplomatic privilege with Niamey despite tensions between Niger and ECOWAS over the withdrawal of the AES member countries from the organization. This decision is part of a regional dynamic of reviewing traditional security partnerships these countries have argued. Armies from Chad and Niger are also fighting against insurgency, particularly active in the Lake Chad Basin, a situation that has compounded their humanitarian crisis for the two countries as well. Muhammad Deby Itno and General Abdurrahman Chiani are expected to strengthen security and defense cooperation, regional integration and trade. Other areas of agreement will be disclosed at the end of Deby's working visit.
Augustine Kohli filed a report now attending the third United Nations Conference on Landlocked Developing Countries in Turkmenistan. The Confederation of Sahel States has denounced restriction on its right of access to the sea. The AES Confederation said it considers it to be contrary to international conventions and motivated by political pressure. Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, all in central Sahel, constitute a landlocked area of nearly 3 million square kilometers. Representing AES, Malian Prime Minister Abdoulaye Mega called for an explicit condemnation by the United Nations of the measures he said were aimed at logistically, economically and strategically isolating its members. He particularly cited the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, Montego Bay, 1982, that access to and from the sea constitutes an enforceable right. The AES considers that this right has been restricted over the last 2 years and evokes an instrumentalization of trade route in the context of regional tensions. Now, in Nigeria, listeners of the radio program In the Sahel have commended its role in promoting dialogue and awareness around security issues affecting communities in the country. The program, produced by West Africa Democracy Radio with support from the Open Society Foundation's OSF, was the focus of an evaluation mission in Jos, Plateau State, Nigeria. WDL's Wadr was there and report.
For 86 consecutive weeks, the voices of communities from Mali to Burkina Faso, from Niger to Nigeria, echoed across the airwaves through In the Sahel, a radio program aimed at shaping an African-led narrative on insecurity and resilience in the region, with production based in Dakar in English and French and translation into local languages. In the Sahel reached deep into rural and urban audiences via partner community radio stations, including KTFM in Jos, Plateau State, North Central Nigeria. During the evaluation mission to KTFM, listeners engaged in honest feedback sessions, praising the program's rich content, relatable voices, and relevance to everyday security challenges.
I can remember exactly there was this topic that was treated about the experiences of those that were affected by the insecurity, especially women and children. And I can say categorically that that particular topic stood top for me, because what Wadr did was just exactly what you would expect. If you don't have first-hand information about the plight of those that have been affected by these insecurities, you cannot speak about it.
But they also offered constructive suggestions to improve the impact of future programming.
I must commend you. Your Hausa is deep. If maybe there's a way to lighten, because some words, like I'll have to ask, please, what is he saying? Yes. So, and most people, they're like me, that don't know how to speak or Hausa very well. So if there's a way it can be in maybe like vernacular, broken, pidgin, to go a long way.
I'm recommending that let's have the listeners to interact, maybe a phone in and so on and so forth.
The evaluation forms part of a broader effort by West Africa Democracy Radio to measure how regional media initiatives like In the Sahel are influencing public dialogue and building community resilience against conflicts and insecurity. For Newslink, Usman Umar, reporting from Jos, North Central Nigeria.
A high-powered ECOWAS Parliamentary Awareness Delegation is in Liberia on a mission to combat the rising tide of drug abuse and mental health issues among young people across the region. Since the arrival, the delegation has been engaging with government officials, agencies and community leaders to deepen understanding and mobilize action on these social challenges. Drug and substance abuse is not only a threat to individual health, but also poses serious socioeconomic consequences, destabilizing communities and hindering national development. From Monrovia, Abraham Parker reports.
During meetings with government ministries, Orlando Pereira Diaz, head of the ECOWAS delegation, emphasized the urgent need to address drug abuse as a regional public health crisis. The Minister of Health for Liberia, Luis Boto, acknowledged that substance abuse is not a problem unique to Liberia of the sub-region, but a global challenge.
Because some of those substances are carcinogenic, so you also get cancer, so that had to interact with drugs. We are actually working collaboratively, and the ministry has said we are building a neuropsychiatric hospital intensively so that we can be able to institutionalize and treat our patients.
Edwin Snow, Liberia's representative and head of delegation to ECOWAS, who underscored the pivotal role youth play in nation building, also urged effective collaboration between government agencies, civil society, and communities.
The idea of this mission is that we want to synchronize a drug law for West Africa. When this mission is completed, they're going to do a presentation to the ECOWAS Parliament in our next session, which will be held in Ghana. Ghana, and the result from that will go to the authorities of head of states and government.
To assess the problem and foster community-based rehabilitation and reintegration, the dedication visited centers across Monrovia where drug addicts are receiving treatment. The timing of this visit coincides with a planned protest rally titled "Say No to Drugs" scheduled to take place on Thursday, August 7, 2025. Recall, President Joseph Boakai, in his first State of the Nation address, declared drug abuse a public health emergency and announced a steering committee to tackle the existential threat. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
And more on health. The World Health Organization, WHO, has proposed a 50% increase in taxes on tobacco, alcohol, and sugary drinks across Africa. According to the WHO chief, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the move would generate revenue for the health sector and save countless lives. He was speaking at the 2025 Africa Health Sovereignty Summit in Accra, a landmark initiative that explores steps to raise adequate funding to bridge the huge infrastructure gap. As WDL's Nadide Tete report, Tuesday's conference comes in the wake of dwindling donor support for the treatment of deadly chronic diseases and emerging health threats.
Speaking at the 2025 Africa Health Sovereignty Summit hosted by Ghana, the WHO chief Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus stressed that Africa does not need charity. He called for bold domestic reforms to strengthen the continent's health economy and reduce dependence on external aid.
One practical solution is health taxes. A 50% price increase on harmful products like tobacco, alcohol, and sugary drinks could generate an additional $3.7 trillion globally within 5 years and save millions of lives.
President Mahama criticized the current global health governance structure, describing it as outdated, unjust, and unfit for 21st century realities, calling for a more democratic health architecture.
Globally, we must champion a new health governance architecture that reflects a multipolar, digitally interconnected, climate-challenged world. Health governance must be democratic, it must be just, and it must be fit for the 21st century realities.
The Ghanaian leader also announced two key commitments, which include the establishment of a presidential high-level task force on global health governance and the launch of the Sustain Initiative, both aimed at driving coordinated policy reforms and long-term health resilience across the continent.
And I extend an open invitation to all nations represented here to join us in building an African health investment ecosystem that is driven by purpose and is powered by equity and anchored in our sovereignty.
The Accra Summit brought together African heads of state, global health experts, and policy leaders to chart a new path towards health sovereignty on the continent. For WADR, Nadide Tete, Accra.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Senegalese Prime Minister Sonko embarks on a 5-day working visit to Turkey aimed at boosting trade. Residents of Plateau State, North Central Nigeria commend WDL's security project in promoting dialogue and awareness. Chadian President Deby arrives in Niger for a working visit. And still ahead in the news, an ECOWAS parliamentary delegation kicks off awareness on drug addiction and mental health issues in Monrovia. We do have the press review, guest interview, and the latest in the world of sport. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget, you can listen to us live on wadr.org and fuller live streams on YouTube and Facebook. Elsewhere in Cameroon, the Constitutional Council has thrown out an appeal filed by the country's opposition politician Maurice Kamto. The court's decision on Tuesday upheld that Kamto's candidacy for the October presidential election was invalid. The Election Commission of Cameroon, Elacam, in July rejected the politician's application as a presidential candidate in the upcoming ballot due to multiple nominations. Francis Boniface tells us more.
The ruling by Cameroon's Constitutional Council officially puts an end to Maurice Kamto's presidential ambition in the 2025 election. The court on Tuesday backed the Electoral Commission of Cameroon's decision of July 26 that disqualifies Kamto for multiple nominations. Denouncing the unanimous verdict, Hippolyte Melitia Kouang, lawyer for the president of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement (MRC), believes that the decision is politically motivated. The opposition politician had run under the banner of Mandem, which was deemed contrary to the provisions of the Electoral Code, which requires a single nomination. Maurice Kamto's disqualification from the electoral process ahead of the 2025 presidential vote has sparked nationwide criticism. While Kamto, the main challenger of Paul Biya in the 2018 election, is sidelined, 13 candidacies have been validated. Biya, 92, is contesting in the race as he seeks an 8th mandate under a tense regional political climate. CSOs and opposition political parties have continued to call on the Electoral Commission to ensure free, fair and inclusive polls on October 12, 2025.
Francis Boniface with that report.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, for today's press review, Sankli Janko takes us through the front pages of Gambian national dailies for trending and developing stories.
Thank you for joining us. Let's begin with the Standard newspaper today. And the lead story on the Standard newspaper reads, study reveals politicians, religious leaders are key perpetrators of hate speech. That's the lead story on the Standard newspaper. This other one reads, 2 men in court for homosexuality. Homosexuality is forbidden in the Gambia. And this other one reads, inquiry accuses ex-registrar general of concealing info. The drivers complain of loading on new OIC feeder roads. This other one reads, Turkish language era begins at UTG. UTG is the University of the Gambia. Let's move on to The Voice newspaper. And the lead story on The Voice newspaper reads, BAC collects $103 million revenue in 6 months, reveals PRO BAC. BAC is Brikama Area Council. This one reads, 2 Senegalese remanded over 1 million theft case. Former registrar says he forgot letters to Jane Commission. Let's move on to The Point newspaper, whose lead story has to do with the former registrar at the ongoing inquiry about the sales assets of former President Jammeh. And it reads, a former registrar caught in web of denials over Jammeh asset letters. Sierra Leone senior customs on benchmark study tour at GRA. GRA is Gambia Revenue Authority. This other one reads, Gambian students to adjust as UK shifts to e-visas. Let's take a look at the final newspaper for today, and that is the Fourier newspaper. And the lead story on the Fourier newspaper reads, government calls on farmers to report agents who inflate fertilizer prices. Gambia's finance minister takes over as chair of African IMF World Bank caucus. That is Minister of Finance C.D. Keita. This other one reads, 2 young men on trial for allegedly homosexual conduct in Old Yundum. And finally, former registrar faces scrutiny over disclosures in Jammeh assets probe. These are the major stories making headlines on Gambian Daily. It's back to you in the studio.
Many thanks, Uncle Lichanko.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, our guest is Professor Fallu Sam, Chair of the Institute for Trade Policy Studies in Africa. He joins us for an assessment of Senegal's recent international engagements and their impact on the local economy. This is as Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko embarks on a 5-day working visit to Turkey, before which he had met with China's Xi Jinping. Professor Sam shares insight on the opportunities as well as the gaps in these dealings for Senegal as it struggles to rebuild despite having a heavy debt profile and a high cost of living crisis.
Number one is that it's part of bilateral relation between Senegal and Turkey. The government of Turkey, since the tenure of Mr. Macky Sall, the former president, have made huge investment in Senegal and has a really big stake in Senegal economy, and those relations have been continued, of course, in terms of continuity of the states of government, but also to be strengthened and amplified in a way that really would be beneficial to both countries. So on a bilateral basis, this is something that really is is fully well taken in that way. The visit for Prime Minister Sonko to Turkey can be also placed in an other geostrategical situation, which is the situation in Gaza, in Israel, because both countries are part of the Organization of Islamic Countries. Both countries are vehemently condemning what's happening in Gaza.
The Prime Minister was in China some few months ago and currently in Turkey. And we want to find out that how strategically are these international visits by the Prime Minister important to Senegal at the back of the Prime Minister launching the economic recovery plan as part of the Senegal 2050 agenda?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I guess once again, the overall picture is something that is deeply rooted in two elements, and which is also rooted now in this new element, which is the recovery plan. The two elements that are constituting like the roots for this is a personal one for the Prime Minister. Remember, he is the chief, he is the leader of the party. The president, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, is no longer the chair of the party. Mr. Sonko is the chair of the party. And as a chair of the party and as an individual, he has well-rooted credence and well-rooted opinions in regional integration, in sovereignty.
Again, I would want to find out that how should Senegal be mindful to protect its sovereignty so it's not exploited in global trade as it is currently engaging with more of these international partners, as again these countries are also interested in Senegal's extractive sector?
Yeah, even, I mean, before going to the kind of extractive sector, I mean, and you mentioned it earlier, all of this also is to be placed within the recovery plan that he presented last Friday. And from these, of course, the plan or himself did not expect the majority of the fund to be from FDI, foreign direct investment, but rather from domestic mobilization of funds. But you will see that in the face of Senegal being part of the club of extractive industry in terms of gas, in terms of oil, I mean, this is showcasing Senegal as a privileged destination for FDI, as a partner, but an equal partner in terms of sovereignty, in terms of resources to the rest of the world.
Professor Fallo Sam, chair of the Institute for Trade Policy Studies in Africa, was our guest. Well, in sport news, Chan is up and running, and yesterday we saw a firecracker match that saw the defending champion Senegals defeat Nigeria BT. Well, okay, I've got Christopher is here.
You've just opened it up, and then indeed the defending champion Senegal actually kicked off their Chan Pomaja 2024 campaign with a hard-fought 1-0 win over Nigeria in a tightly contested Group D opener at the Alman Stadium on Tuesday. And then a second half goal by Christian Gomez proved decisive in the much anticipated match because all eyes were on that particular game as of yesterday. But interestingly, the result extends Senegal's strong record against the regional rivals at the tournament and marks their 6th 1-0 victory in Chan history. And interestingly, there are some games today, as well as Mauritania will be taking on Tanzania, but Burkina Faso will also be taking on Central African Republic in today's encounter. And Burkina Faso actually, after a disappointing opening lose to host Tanzania, Burkina Faso are in urgent need of a win. Meanwhile, debutants Central African Republic are also chasing a historic first victory, fueled by national pride and a desire to make their mark in today's tournament as well.
Indeed, great news there, interesting fixtures that we are seeing, and what a way to keep people glued to their TV set. Just as the Afro basketball is ending, the Chan is starting, and then on and on till we get to the big
World Cup,
and the Nations Cup. Many thanks, Christopher, for the sports news. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Falilu So and Sheikh Njai for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms: X, Instagram at WDR English, and Facebook West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. 50/50, our flagship gender program, is coming up next at the bottom of the hour. I am Imo Edet. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinion.